I searched east and went west, from whence came the moon and the sun. Then the moon and the sun departed, leaving the young man with his courage. And I will follow wherever he came from, the young man with his courage. In the story of the Green Knight it says, I used to serve a being called God before I was ridiculed and covered with shame. I was his humble servant because I believed he would grant me his favour, but from now on I will refuse to serve him. If he persecutes me with his hatred, I will resign myself to that too. Friend, when the time for you to fight has come, may the thought of a woman rather than God protect you. And later it says, My love will give you peace and successfully protect you from all dangers, even though you will valiantly defend yourself. I am in you, and my fate is strictly connected with yours. I want to be close to you during combat. If you firmly believe in me, luck and valor will never depart you. Hello there once again and welcome, wherever you may be. I have some extracts from Gurdjieff today, and I'll talk a little bit about how technology is changing human consciousness, something about esoteric Christianity. But let me begin with the traditionalist René Guénon, who says, By individualism, we mean the negation of any principle higher than individuality and the consequent reduction of civilization in all its branches to purely human elements. Fundamentally, therefore, individualism amounts to the same thing as what at the time of the Renaissance was called humanism. It is also the characteristic feature of the profane point of view, as we have described it above. Indeed, these are different names for the same thing, and we have also shown that this profane outlook coincides with the anti-traditional outlook that lies at the root of all specifically modern tendencies. That is not to say, of course, that this outlook is entirely new. It has already appeared in a more or less pronounced form in other periods, but its manifestations were always limited in scope and apart from the main trend. And they never went so far as to overrun the whole of a civilization, as has happened during recent centuries in the West. What has never been seen before in the erection of an entire civilization on something purely negative, on what indeed could be called the absence of principle. And it is this that gives the modern world its abnormal character and makes of it a sort of monstrosity, only to be understood if one thinks of it as corresponding to the end of a cyclical period, as we have already said. Yes, and I believe it would be quite difficult for me to have a conversation with people about how the gross misuse of the body, that is, the LGBT, is a desecration of a life and will lead to the destruction of society. But who could I say this to who would understand today? They do not understand. And that is the most shocking thing. To wake up one day and recognize that all the conversations that these people have about what is wrong and what they are going to do don't mean anything. They do not see out of their eyes, and most importantly, it has been a long time since they have been active. Their conversations, their feelings, their rhythms are passive. They are passive receivers. They're like a flower that opens. They feel, they experience the environment, and things circulate inside of them. Feelings, thoughts, they receive them and repeat them automatically. They do not recognize the difference between that and the life of a real man, because there are not enough real men around them. People in the fourth way talk about observing emotions. Why do they talk about observing emotions? That's passive once again. Can they not produce emotions. That is why Gurdjieff talked about doing. And how should we be active in our emotions? I know many ways, but in the West, the main way is what is called praying, which is the generating of emotional waves outwards that connects you to the higher world and to this world and to your fellow man and to yourself. That is praying. The Western paths are based upon the emotional current and the mastery of it through prayer. Last week in the video I included the voices of the Northern Raven. And listening back to them, often they seemed to be speaking. I could almost make out what they were saying, but with a shock I realized that it's the same for people. After all, people exist in this body, the body of a biped man, 2 arms and 2 legs, and we have a voice which we use to transmit our special knowledge, our consciousness, our state, our culture. In watching some seagulls this morning, I was wondering if one of those seagulls might do something very extraordinary, and for instance try to save a baby seagull that's fallen out of its nest, something that happens this time of year. That seagull would have to go above and beyond and strain himself and do very difficult things. And isn't it the same with us? Isn't that what the path really is? To strain our connection with this body and make it do very difficult things, which is evolution. Now here on the south coast of England, close to Brighton, in the last few years, a very strange phenomena has happened. There was a large public space by the seafront, and the council was looking for something to put there. And what they ended up putting there is this vast grey pole that just stands there. And there is occasionally a donut-shaped restaurant that goes up and down. But most of the time it's down, and all you have is a long grey cylinder, a more empty and hollow piece of artwork you could never imagine. And shortly after that, out at sea, a whole flock of grey poles was put up, this time wind turbines, and then in the streets, 5G poles, CCTV poles, and long lines, kilometre-long lines of new street lights for net zero cycle lanes that completely destroy coastal car routes that used to have the most beautiful views. It is almost like being in a circuit board, as if society is morphing into a giant circuit board all around us. How could that be? How could people lose their minds in this way? The strange truth is, their feelings, their thinking, their habits and rhythms of the day, they are passive creatures, just like chickens and goats and cows. Yes, they move around the farm, they eat here, they shit there, they screw here, they deliver there, and they sleep over here. They are passive creatures. They have lost their sense of being souls. Now, a friend of mine, she's 65 years old, an ex-nurse, she was saying the other day that she felt all of a sudden the need to have tattoos down her leg because it would look nice. And it seems that about 10% of the people in the UK have tattooed themselves, sometimes right across their face. And whether you like it or not, some kind of signal has gone out and 10% of the people have been tuned into it and have simply done it. And it is too much for people. I don't blame people. That is an assault. And as people become more tuned into their phones, their entire consciousness is starting to resonate with it. They demand that these LED lights are on all the time because it feels the same to them as staring at their mobile phone. Their consciousness, their energetic rhythms, and even their biological rhythms is becoming tuned and regulated to these devices. Once upon a time, there was an idea that the internet would be a place where the whole world could share in a democratic way. That does not happen anymore. These days, whatever you see is very tightly controlled by large American corporations in San Francisco, and it's almost like you have an individual mask on your face, and at the end of it, it is piped to that corporation, and they will not allow you to see anything else. Well, I can say that the truth is that human beings are very feeling orientated. That's where they've got to in their evolution, and the careful guarding and owning of your feelings is the most important religion that you can have. And if you don't do that, San Francisco will own them. Well, let's have a listen to Gurdjieff. He says, "Afterwards, when I shall have told you more about the three-brained beings of that ill-starred planet Earth, you will yourself understand and have your own opinion about everything. You yourself will very well understand that although the fundamental causes of the whole chaos that now reigns on that ill-starred planet Earth were certain oversights coming from above on the part of various sacred individuals, yet nevertheless that the chief causes for the developing of further ills are only those abnormal conditions of ordinary being existence which they themselves gradually established, and which they continue to establish down to the present time. In any case, my boy, when you learn more about these favourites of yours, not only, I repeat, will you clearly see that the duration of the existence of these unfortunates has gradually become so pitiful in comparison with the normal duration of existence which has already long ago been established as a law for the three-centred beings of every kind in the whole of the universe. But you will also understand that in these unfortunates, for the same reason, they began gradually to disappear, and at the present time are quite absent in them any normal being sensations whatever concerning any cosmic phenomenon. Gurdjieff said that you may not understand all this, but the day come when you would understand, when you would see. I'll talk a little bit now about the esoteric side of Catholicism. Some things I saw this week are that there are many things encoded in the Lord's Prayer, and I think they're encoded so far back, they're so deeply concealed, that Christianity as a whole may not even know about them, and they really come from ancient Egypt. One of the things is that the 8th line and the 9th line are long lines. They are double lines. And that refers to feminine wiles, shall I say. And of course, it is here that the two higher bodies are formed. Another aspect is the sequencing of the 3 middle story centers through that prayer, which is an extremely effective and important practice. And yet another revelation this week is Catholics make the sign of the cross frequently. Why do they do that? They do that to make a firm foundation before they pray. Because if you come out of the world and you just start praying, the prayer is everywhere. There is no ground. But if you make the sign of the cross, you create a stable point. And from there you can attach the prayer to. This week I had the misfortune to endure a 90-minute Mass for Corpus Christi, most of which I was asleep during, but I was dragged up to what is called the High Altar, which is the place right at the back of the church, and I could feel a very powerful light coming out of the sacred vessel on the altar up there. The idea that Catholicism doesn't work anymore is just complete nonsense. It is all still on. And I was thinking this week that the entire Roman Empire, all those emperors, generals, and centurions have filled the Catholic light stream with their lives. I went to Israel when I was about 21, and I never for 1 minute thought that that place was Christian. I even visited the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It didn't mean anything to me at that time, because Catholicism is European, it is Roman. It is the Roman Empire that is the Holy Land. Here, Gurdjieff is counseling a student. I have already answered this question when someone asked the same thing. I said, if you do not have an ideal, if you do not believe in God, then your father, your mother, your teacher can serve for you as an ideal. I have an ideal. I've always been a Catholic, but I no longer see Jesus Christ in the same way. In the beginning, Catholicism was very good, but then not. They searched for midday at 2 o'clock. They diluted everything. In the beginning it was superior to the Orthodox religion and to all others. I cannot That is not necessary. You have lost that possibility. You are no longer a child. You are big now. You should have logic and do not search automatically. To have direct contact with God is impossible. Millions and millions of non-entities wish to have relations with Mr. God direct. This is impossible. But you can have a relation in this line. What you do here, for instance, has this changed your interior ideal since you took part in our conversations? Then perhaps you can have confidence in the person who directs you here. That doesn't satisfy me entirely. I want something else. You do not know what you want. I wish you to understand that your nearest father, mother, teacher can serve as your ideal in place of God. The real God, forget him. As you are, you can never have relations with God. When you have grown, this could be, but you are one among millions of non-entities. Meantime, take as an ideal whoever is nearest, and then you can pray to God, because this person has an ideal also. This ideal has in turn an ideal, and so on to God. The Salzman. Only he who is immediately above you can be God for you. He is a God who in turn has a God. It is a ladder. There is always something above. Each degree or rung leads you to another, and you can get your answers by the same chain. I was reading a parable this week. I won't include it, but it was one where Jesus counseled us to forgive people their debts as we are forgiven. And it seemed to me this creates a small ladder, a little bit up and a little bit down, and we begin a ray. In the same way, when we work towards an aim, diligently, conscientiously, using all our functions together with a good spirit, we create a small light around us where the beginnings of a ray are born, and they start reaching outwards, and eventually we reform the line. Goodbye and take care.
Just